then had to ask Pederson several follow-ups before he finally said Wentz was the team's quarterback of the future. So, Shannon, how convincing was Pederson's response?
It wasn't very convincing at all, Skip. I understand. How hard was it for Doug Pederson to say, Brett's a very good friend of mine. I've known Brett almost 30 years. I was his backup in Green Bay. We're very good friends. We talk, we hang out, we do things like that. But Carson Wentz is our quarterback. Carson Wentz is our guy. How hard was that to say? Skip, it was almost as the reporters like, Doug, do you realize the ditch that you're digging? Do you realize you're digging it deeper and deeper and you're throwing dirt on your own head? Skip, they kept asking him. And it wasn't until like the umpteenth time that he finally said, Brett's entitled to his opinion, but Carson's our guy. You could have nipped this in the bud. Skip, this would not even been a story. Had he answered it that way the first time, it would have been asked and answered and moved on.
You don't even need to say, Brett's my friend. You don't need to say that. Just say, no, Carson's our guy.
Right.
Period. End of story.
Brett's entitled to his opinion, as you guys are and everybody else. I'm sure everybody has an opinion who we should play, who we shouldn't play. But Carson Wentz is the quarterback of the Philadelphia Eagles. He's our guy. We drafted him. We moved up to get him. We're happy to have him. Boom, done. It was after they asked and asked and asked and asked that he finally came around to this. And this doesn't bode well, Skip. This doesn't. See, for me, I don't think Doug is Carson Wentz guy. Carson Wentz is a Howie Roseman guy. And that's all that matters.
I would agree.
So when the nuts and bolts of this,
and Howie Roseman's the GM,
general manager. Skip, for this Nick Foles, Skip, you do realize that every loss that the Bears have has happened as Nick Foles is the quarterback. He scored 11, 20, 23, 10, 23, and 17. They average 17 points a game. The 2 and 4. That's what they are with Nick Foles. Trubisky, as terrible as he's been, he was 3-0. So I don't know. I'm sure walking to him, phone was ringing up the hook. Man, you heard what your head coach, you heard what Doug said? Now, what did he say? Man, it took him like 2 or 3 minutes to get around to say, you his guy. Now, Wentz walked into the room, he side-eyed him, Skip. It didn't even have to be like this. Just say, hey, Carson's our quarterback, and we're very lucky to have Carson Wentz.
So what do you always tell me when a close friend or a family member tweets something about someone?
You already know.
I know where you heard that from.
Exactly.
From him.
Yes.
Right?
It got Golden Tate in trouble.
It did.
It got Golden Tate demoted to play on the practice team, and he didn't even travel.
And that was his wife?
Because we don't, Skip, they normally say, why they're not throwing you the ball? She said targets. Where'd you get targets from?
There you go. So where did Brett Favre get this notion from that they should have kept Nick Foles? I'll bet he does talk fairly regularly to Doug Pederson.
Skip, they were really close.
Yep. So at some point along the trail, he has heard from Doug Pederson, you know what? Probably should have just hung on to Nick, because Doug Pederson wrote a whole book about that playoff run to that Super Bowl championship called Fearless.
Yes.
And Doug Pederson, the one thing I do love about him is he can be arrogantly honest to a fault. He loved what he did with Nick Foles because they were a clique. They worked well together because they were on the same wavelength.
Right.
And whatever Dougie P saw, Nick Foles saw and was able to execute it all the way to the Philly special, which actually Nick had the confidence, the wavelength with the coach to be able to suggest it.
Here?
Yeah. And yeah. Oh, good. Once you have that confidence in each other, good things can start happening. That two-way confidence doesn't operate between Carson Wentz and Doug Pederson. And Carson is known for a couple of years. Doug's not completely sold. And what did they do in the draft? They drafted my man, Jalen Hurts, from the University of Oklahoma by way of Alabama. And
in the second round.
Yeah, in the second round. And I've told you that what would scare me the most as a Cowboy fan is if he elevated Jalen Hurts into the starting lineup, because he just makes plays. He is a leader of men in ways Carson, to me, doesn't strike me he's that kind of leader of men. And I believe that Jalen Hurts would put this team on his back and lift them to the NFC East title, which is the NFC least, obviously. But I wouldn't trust Carson Wentz to do that. So as Jenny just pointed out, he is running away with the turnover lead in the NFL. And that drives a head coach nuts.
Yes.
And it sounds like that Dougie P couldn't even reach down for the coach speak.
He couldn't even fake it.
He couldn't fake it. He couldn't fake it because he could have just dismissed it.
Yes.
Because it doesn't do his team any good for him to do this.
No.
Because Carson Wentz is your quarterback, and I'm pretty sure they're going to ride or die the rest of the year with Carson Wentz. And that's probably coming from the GM and probably the owner.
Yep,
that they're saying, we're going to just ride this out. Let's see where we go in this bad division. So, to me, the more I read of this, the worse it got, because he opened a whole big can of worms here that I don't think you can close from this point forward.
Well, Skip, because like you said, all he had to do, Brett Favre said this. That's Brett's opinion. Hey, I have the ultimate respect for Brett. Brett was a great player in this league, but Carson Wentz is our quarterback. We believe in Carson Wentz. Even if you're lying, lie to him. You do it all the time. Skip, sometimes a really good coaches, one of my coaches told me this. He said, sometimes we got to lie to you. Sometimes we got to tell you that you're better than you actually are. So that we can convince you, yeah, man, we can win this game. We're going to win this game. Knowing all the time it's not going to probably end well for us. Lie to him. Okay, you feel a certain way. I get it, Skip. You want a Super Bowl. The guy won a Super Bowl with you. Because we would not be talking about Dougie P and the way we talk about him had he not won that Super Bowl. And Nick Foles helped that be possible. That book would have sold 10 copies.
Even you admitted, not maybe the first playoff game against Atlanta, but the second one against Minnesota and the third one against the New England Patriots were two of the best playoff games we've ever seen. You agreed?
Yes, absolutely. And that was the thing, Skip. Doug Pederson would have sold 10 copies of that book had he not won the Super Bowl. But because he won the Super Bowl, people were like, well, let me have you fearless. Now he's become very foolish and foolhardily believing that it's all about him. Doug understands coaching. He played up on the mic hungry. He understands Andy Reid. He understands how this thing works.
Yep.
You don't say that about your quarterback.
Okay, and speaking of Nick Foles, remember, they ran it back the next year. And speaking of Chicago, remember, they went to Chicago and stole a playoff game, and it felt like Nick Foles was doing it again. And what did I start calling him? He's the Magic Man. And then they went to New Orleans, and they had them on the ropes.
Should have won that with
Alshon. It went right through his hands, and it was intercepted, and it stopped a drive that very possibly would have won that game.
Right.
Well, here he came again, and then he was gone to Jacksonville because he got paid.
Right.
Okay? And that was a disaster, and Chicago, you could argue, is turning into a disaster, although they did beat the GOAT on a Thursday night.
Well, maybe they need to, like, whomever he's going to be on, maybe they need to put him in the division where Tom Brady is playing. He get Tom twice a year because for whatever reason, he has Tom's number.
Well, I tweeted that night. It's too bad he can't play Tom Brady every game.
Yeah. It might be a situation, Skip, like Eli. Tom couldn't do anything with Eli.
Nope.
Regular season.
Neither way. Agreed.
But this is Doug Pederson opened up a wound that was healing.
And remember, The Athletic just came out with another bombshell analysis that just ripped and slashed Carson Wentz, as I call him, give it to him Wentz. And it left pretty much no hope at the end of that breakdown. And then it feels like piling on that Dougie P didn't have his back.
Exactly. And when you take a quarterback in the second round, Skip, after this is the first year of the money that he's supposed to the big contract. And you taking a quarter before he even get it, you signed it before he even starts making a dime, like, yeah, we need another quarterback.
And when you always have to defend your quarterback, it doesn't bode well for just the team vibe, the locker room. A little messy right now between that team. Well, Eagles-Giants is featured in this week's free-to-play Super 6 contest where players have won over $1 million so far.